April Glaser is a tech writer for Slate magazine, and she joins us now to talk about all of this. April, thanks for being with us. So once the FCC voted 3-2 to repeal net neutrality on Thursday, Massachusetts Democratic Senator Ed Markey announced he would introduce a resolution to reverse this decision. I mean, the resistance was almost immediate, and Congress will ultimately have to decide if these changes actually go through. Do you have a sense of how this will all play out?
Well, I mean, sure, he introduced a possibility to repeal the FCC rules, but he's going to have to get a majority of senators on board to do that, and right now he has 15. Now, 39 senators did write a letter earlier this week, all Democratic, mind you, to the FCC, saying that they supported actually not going through with these rules, as Markey is continuing to do now. But, you know, they're going to have to get a majority, and 39 is just not 51.
And the votes, along net neutrality have all fallen along party lines, and with Republican majorities in the House and the Senate, it's expected to stick. Earlier this month, you wrote about what the internet now would look like without these net neutrality rules in place. So just explain to us what are some of the biggest changes users can expect to see right away.
So it's not going to be like an immediate sea change, right? As soon as the rules drop, you're not going to all of a sudden take 5 minutes to access your favorite website, and then it'll take 2 seconds to access Google. Instead, it's probably going to be more like death by 1,000 cuts, right? So it might be a lot slower to, say, access like a news website or a restaurant website that can't pay for that faster speed service, and they'll eventually just migrate to having all of their web presence on Yelp instead, because Yelp can afford for that high speed service. Or it might be that you're an AT&T subscriber and you get free access to HBO programming. Well, in that case, they're prioritizing HBO over other video offerings like Hulu, and that's not a neutral way of acting either.
And we actually have a glimpse of the future. In your article, you point to some countries that don't have, net neutrality guidelines in place, places like Guatemala and Portugal. What does web access look like in those places?
Right. Well, Portugal is part of the EU, which does have net neutrality protections, but what they don't have are any restrictions on mobile internet providers offering free access to certain apps. So, in that case, and also in the case of Guatemala, once you use up your data caps that month, you can buy a package that gives you free access to a bundle of apps, as if you're, buying a subscription to a cable TV channel like HBO again. But that's not quite the way the internet works. That's not full openness. And it's the phone companies that decide which apps get in that bundle. So there we have, again, they're deciding the winners and losers. And, access to Facebook and access to Twitter and Snapchat is not the same as access to the whole internet. People need the internet to apply for jobs. They need the internet to find out, emergency information and news, not just, basic social media offerings.
And critics have also said that what this does is it emboldens the big, powerful companies and squeezes out the small guy, the tech startup who wants to maybe design a site like Reddit or the original, Google, basic websites that were accessible because of the equality on the internet. You also touched on one of the big news item from Thursday, and that's Disney's bid to buy portions of Fox. It was finalized. They now have some leverage over what we describe as the content industry. Explain how that plays into all of this and essentially what it means for consumers.
So what we're seeing is kind of an entrenchment of power of those who are already powerful, of the incumbents, right? And so, with this merger, we're going to see two huge content makers merge and become even more powerful. And then they can leverage that, on ISPs to, say, get priority access to users, and then, knock out other, smaller content makers and indie content makers. There may be more of an incentive for Fox and Disney to actually merge with an ISP now, so that way that ISP can have priority access to that content and not charge for access to that content, but then try to charge, even more for stuff that's not on their network. So it could just act in a way to just cascade consolidation further. And again, what we're seeing is just further entrenchment of those who are already in power, to the disadvantage of those who don't really have a level playing field and a way to start.
April Glaser, tech writer for Slate, thanks for your time.
Thanks so much.